Welcome to the February 1st, 2023 meeting of the Thurston County Planning Commission. The Thurston County Planning Commission is a citizens advisory committee to the Board of County Commissioners on land use planning matters such as the comprehensive plan and zoning ordinance amendments. Planning Commission actions are in the form of recommendations to the county commissioners who are the final decision makers. All Planning Commission meetings are open to the public. Citizens are welcome to observe all Planning Commission briefings and work sessions. We welcome public comment on those topics for which a public hearing has not been held. My name is Eric Casino. I am the Seasons Chair, reside in District 2. We'll start our introductions of the Planning Commissioners here in the boardroom and then check online. Can we start with you, Commissioner Simmons?
Jim Simmons, District 3.
Helen Wheatley, District 1.
Scott Nelson, District 3.
Derek Day, District 1.
Barry Halverson, District 2.
Joel Hanson. Am I District 4 now?
Well, you're still three.
Well, still 3. Okay, District 3, soon to be 4.
Do we have any commissioners online? Okay, no commissioners online today, but that is 7 of 9, so we have a quorum. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to look over the agenda, and if so, I'd entertain a motion.
Move to approve the agenda for Wednesday, February 1st, 2023.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion on the agenda? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote.
Commissioner Day.
Oh,
Aye.
Oh,
did you have something?
Yeah.
Please.
I'd like to add a little discussion on the wireless minority report at the end.
Okay, I'll put that right in front of, go to the order, okay? We'll call for the vote. Thank you.
Commissioner Day.
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson.
Aye.
Commissioner Halverson.
Aye.
Commissioner Hanson.
Aye.
Commissioner Simmons.
All right.
Commissioner Wheatley. Commissioner Casino.
Aye, the agenda has been approved. With that, has everybody had a chance to look over our meeting minutes from January 11th, 2023? And if so, I'd entertain a motion.
I move to approve the meeting minutes and accept the audio as officially made record for January 11th, 2023.
Been moved and seconded to approve the meeting minutes and accept the audio as the official meeting record for our January 11th, 2023 meeting. We'll call for the vote.
Commissioner Day.
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson.
Aye.
Commissioner Halverson.
Aye.
Commissioner Hanson.
Aye.
Commissioner Simmons.
Aye.
Commissioner Wheatley. Commissioner Pessinger is absent. Commissioner Casino.
Aye.
here.
Okay, we have 8 now and unanimously accepted the meeting minutes for January 11th, 2023. Thank you for coming in, Commissioner Pessinger. All right, with that, we're going to move on to the public communication portions of our meeting, and it does not look like we have anybody in the boardroom. Do we have anybody online? If you're online and would like to address the Planning Commission, please raise your hand and we'll unmute you and give you 3 minutes.
Reiner.
Lisa Reiner, you're up, Lisa. You have 3 minutes, please. That's Polly.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate speaking with the Thurston Planning Commission tonight. I wanted to address the Grand Mound sub-area plan discussion. I know that in the past,
Ms. Reiner,
yes,
we've already held a public hearing on that matter, so we're not taking any more comment on that.
okay, so essentially, are you taking comment on the wireless issue still?
No, that's long past Planning Commission too. You're more than welcome to address the Board of County Commissioners on both of those issues, but they're effectively out of our hands at this point.
Okay. Well, I thought that the wireless discussion was still ongoing. Many of us in the county still have concerns about wireless communication towers. And I guess it's going before the Board of County Commissioners and we'll see what they have to say. But at this point, we had some concerns about these towers. I don't know, is there, I guess, a group going to address those concerns? Is there going to be another study on the wireless issue? I thought there was.
This is all at the county commissioner level now. There's nothing more for the Planning Commission to do on it. So you'll have to address your concerns at that level.
Okay. Well,
thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Is there anybody else online that would like to address the Planning Commission? All right, I don't think we see anybody else. So we're going to move on to our next item on our agenda, which is new business, which is item number 4, work session number 1 on code clarifications and correction amendments. And I believe that Andrew is here to speak on that tonight.
Give me 1 second to go ahead and share my. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Andrew Bond here with Community Planning. I'm joined by Amelia Schwartz, and this evening we will be discussing the code clarifications and corrections amendment. The code clarifications and corrections amendment is made up of 3 docket items. A28, clarifications of expansions of non-conforming non-residential uses and structures. A29, updated signboard posting procedures. And A13, miscellaneous clerical errors. Tonight, we will be discussing A28 and A29, and we'll return on February 15th to discuss miscellaneous clerical errors.
All right, so we will start off with A28, which is the clarification on expansion of non-conforming non-residential structures, specifically academic schools. And it was initiated due to a project with Southworth Elementary School in Yelm, which is what the images show. All right, so this request was requested by the hearing examiner in 2021, and it was added to the docket last year. And it was due to the Yelm Southworth Elementary School. It was non-conforming use and structure, and they needed to expand their site coverage besides like what was already allowed through their current process. And the pathway that they had to take was a special use and a variance permit. So the challenges under this existing regulation system was expensive. It wasn't very streamlined, and it cost the applicant a lot more time and money. So
The school district that it costs the money
Effectively, yeah.
and the citizens.
So the code changes that we have proposed are based on what the hearing examiner, who was the one who had to review the project, suggested. So this would allow the hearing examiner to grant up to 15% cumulative expansion, similar to the abilities that are already existing for height increases. This would only apply to academic schools applying for a special use permit. So this would not be applied across the board, any different person who wants to expand. It's for academic schools. So we do have just a quick little graphic to show you what cumulative expansion would mean. So if you imagine that the yellow space on the aerial map is the existing project size coverage, the blue, green, and red are potential different expansion projects. Total, they could only equal up to 15%. And that's if the hearing examiner accepted that. If the hearing examiner said you can only do up to 12%, then okay, 12% it is. But they can't exceed 15% with this new proposal.
And so moving on to A29, and it's the updating signboard posting procedures. It's part of all type 3 applications where we are required to post notice on site. This request comes from Development Services, and it was added to the 2022-2023 Development Code docket. And essentially what this request is shifting the responsibility from the county to post the notices for type 3 applications, which can include variances and special use, and shifting that responsibility to the applicants. And what we wanted to do was ensure that it was applied consistently throughout the county, both in the rural county as well as the urban growth areas. So within the code, you'll see that we included Title 20, Title 21, 22, and 23, so that it's consistent across the board. And the entire onus was shifting the responsibility to the applicants, because depending on where in the county that the noticing was taking place, it could take up to 2 hours to get there and back just to post the sign. And keep in mind, we have to pick up the sign. So then there's 2 more hours just doing that commute. And so shifting the time that staff spends driving and putting it towards the actual work. And so like I said, the entire concept of the code change is shifting the responsibility, but we wanted to ensure that when placing the signs on the site, there was consistency for all application types and noticing types. And so what included within our standards, just placement standards. So minimum setbacks from property lines to ensure that it's within a reasonable distance. Height standards so that it's not at the top of a tree and it's not laying down. It's clear, it's concise. We wanted to ensure that it was secure. And so if there were extreme weather events, wind, rain, whatever, it didn't disappear during that point, as well as ensure that it's posted within an appropriate amount of time before the public hearing. And then the final piece really is the proof of posting. And so that's a two-part requirement, which is an affidavit that the applicant signs stating that they followed the rules, as well as providing digital proof to the project planner, who will then tack it on to their project so that we have two forms of verification for this project. And in essence, we are essentially trying to ensure that our staff are focusing on the permits and not necessarily the driving. And so kind of a next steps for the Planning Commission. Obviously, we're here today discussing A28 and A29, but we plan on coming back on February 15th to discuss A13 clerical corrections, which is in itself the name, and address any additional questions that might come up at this meeting, as well as potentially requesting a public hearing to keep the project moving forward with a tentative public hearing date of March 15th with a follow-up work session. Thank you, and we're available for any questions.
Does anybody want to start? Go ahead.
You indicated that the variance in 15% would only be given to academic schools. Why did you limit it just to academic schools? Because they were the one that had the issue?
Yes.
Okay, so could that be expanded to other governmental facilities, buildings, etc.?
Are you asking if we could expand the proposal, or are you asking if somebody applies, can it be, like, the rule be changed?
No, if you put that into legislation, that's the only thing that can be expanded based on hearing examiners doing it. What I'm saying is that if you're doing it just for academic institutions, whether they're public or private, I would assume both, then why can't you do it in that legislation or that change for other facilities?
I would say that stems because it's specifically for a special use. They would follow generally throughout Title 20, all of the regulations. But when they reach that threshold where they can no longer fit within the confines, it specifically falls to academic uses. And I believe that kind of concept of shifting it to a broader approach would be more of a specific docket item that touches on all uses. And this request specifically addresses the hearing examiner's comments.
That's the only ones that the hearing examiner was involved in, though. That's why that comment and why that docketed item. So I'm still asking the same question.
So that's a discussion for the Planning Commission. If the Planning Commission would like to entertain expanding for whom the allowance, thank you, who is can use, then that is within your purview. If that is what you want us to do, we will take that information back, do a little bit more research on what that would look like based on any discussion, and bring it back to you at a follow-up meeting. But I would like to hear a full discussion from the Planning Commission.
I would just say that I can think of a couple things off the top of my head, like the fire district, fire stations, and facilities. There's currently one out in Yelm that's really close to the border. They're talking about some new construction on the fire station, etc. I can think of some other governmental facilities that might be impacting because of expansion, etc. I'm just wondering if that is something that anybody else.
There is existing an administrative 5% that can be applied, I believe, to all
And, yeah,
any use.
and it's the 5%, and this kind of stems to the impervious surface requirement and that coverage. And so the county automatically has the 10% requirement, but it does have a wide range of credits that allow properties to expand quite significantly, I think up to 20% that it could expand for coverage allowances for their specific site. And so this is allowing them to go beyond that because the school, when it was created, was already non-conforming, and it's been non-conforming in its entire existence.
It's a very small lot.
So we're working with a little egg, you could say, but those kind of like, the county already has pretty well-written code to allow for these situations where they just need to pass over. But obviously we can entertain.
No, maybe I'm off base. I don't know. I just was
Well-
thinking, the one I was thinking of was the fire district in particular, besides the school district.
Before we get to Commissioner Wheatley's comments, is there consensus that this is an important issue that Commissioner Halverson has brought up, or are you pretty satisfied with it and we just let it go the way it is?
I'd just like to see if anybody else has any concerns other than fire districts. That was the only other one that I knew about, right now.
I think that if they got concerns, they'd be welcome to petition the board like everybody else. but-
Yeah, my concern is it just takes so long to get a docketed item to us to make it a change in the code, so.
How long ago did the hearing examiner request this?
2021.
So, yeah, year and a half probably.
So
Go ahead. Oh, wait, still on the same issue?
it is I think it's, well, maybe asking staff, they can make a kind of a best professional judgment here. Would you see this same issue being a barrier for some of those other non-residential public uses? Or is their case likely to be simpler and this is kind of more of a special case for schools?
So the non-residential uses more ties to the non-conforming chapter. This is specifically addressing the special use regulations.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to really tie it to something, another use, because it's primarily focused at academic uses within the special use chapter, while the non-conforming chapter has the non-residential, the very long title. And that's kind of where you would see that kind of.
So, yeah, not having gone all the way back through that, I assume that includes other like special use districts, so like fire departments, those kinds of things. And I think my question is, would some of those others, the ones that I think Barry's thinking of, would they run into the same barriers that the school is running into on this lot?
If they happen to have all of the weird things that came up in this situation. So they had, it was a multi-page document. So they wanted to expand, but they were non-conforming use and a non-conforming structure. So they had to hit those two. And then they had to go through the variance and the special permit process because they were at the 9.97 building coverage expansion, which was more than the administrative review. So there was another thing that put them yet again into a more difficult category. And then their impervious surface coverage was below the administrative review, but then they didn't meet all 4 criteria that was listed for the administrative review. So it was like more particular with each step. And did we provide them with the hearing examiner's letter? Because we could also probably
Right.
provide that.
So what we can
Is it
do,
necessary, you think?
So I don't think it's necessary for me. I think I'm just trying to discern, like, is this something we should like stop and spend some extra time on? Like, are we solving a real problem or something that's kind of a, green gorilla? Like,
so what we can do is, if what the planning commission's concern is governmental entities, schools, fire districts, government
Stations.
agencies, government buildings. With that parameter, we can go back and take a look at the code to see if this kind of issue would the solve that we have created would solve it for everybody, or if there would be other one-offs that we could expand this particular amendment to cover.
Would you be able to bring that back at the same time as A13, so that way we don't lose our timeline? Does that sound reasonable to everybody? I'd like to stick to our timeline, so if we could do it with that. Okay, Commissioner Wheatley, please.
I just had a question. This is just for me to learn. So what is a clarification? Technically speaking, like what's a?
Are you
code
referring to the title of the?
Yeah, I mean,
So it was more or less, we played around with phrasing to figure out a title that could generally cover three different things. And so that's kind of what we came down. We're clarifying regulations as well as correcting a lot of grammatical and our department name within the code. So just, it's kind of all encompassing as a title. It's really.
okay, well, it was applied specifically. I mean, I wondered because it's applied specifically to this one, to 828. So I was like, well, that's something, because your question sort of brought up, is this a policy level thing or not? And if it's clarification, then clearly it's supposed to be, this.
It is clarifying the process,
It's clarifying.
because that was part of the hiccup with the examiner, was that at the administrative review level, it got confusing, not only for the applicant, but also for development services staff.
Because there's so many different things that they have to ding off of. So that's the issue then. Yeah, I'm just trying to understand, ultimately what the issue is. So I understand that. So it's just that there are so many ricocheting things that you're hitting all of the things. I get that.
So this,
So, but doesn't that kind of raise the question, that it seems highly unlikely that it would apply to more than this very, very particular case, or?
Sounded to me like it was kind of like a nightmare convergence.
Yeah,
That was pretty
so-
specific, but if it's not gonna slow us down and wouldn't be difficult, I think it's probably worth just looking into. Since the docketing takes so
Yeah,
long.
otherwise, why are we doing it at all if it's just a one-off? Because they've already gone through the
Yeah.
variance process and paid the money.
so this 15% allowance that a hearing examiner can do, that was for the special use. What were the particulars on the variance that they had to do then that this update would change?
So I don't think we would actually change anything to the variance. We would simply remove the variance process from it.
So they
it
could
would
do-
just go through special use.
Instead of
So
having
basically,
two steps, okay?
yeah, so it's all still getting reviewed, they're still looking at all the environmental regulations, all that. They're just paying for the special use permit rather than special use and a variance.
That's reasonable. I'm very comfortable if somebody goes in front of a hearing examiner and gets a decision there, that's enough oversight for me. All right, anybody else have anything on A28 or A29?
Just a comment.
Go ahead.
When you talked about the different things about posting the sign, is it going to specify that in the change as to what they have to do specifically to include where they have to come to pick up the sign?
It doesn't specify that it needs to be picked up at the county, but it would be within their specific application materials and the letter that Development Services provides about just kind of the steps that is required.
Obviously, if you don't want the staff driving out there to post the sign, then you don't want them driving out there to provide the sign. Right, so.
It'll be in the application packet. Yeah. So are you guys, to keep these timelines, you want us to consider setting a public hearing? Nope, we don't need to do that today. All right. Does anybody else have anything on 28 or 29?
Well, I guess I had one niggling little
Okay.
concern.
Okay, go
It's
ahead.
really minor though, and I really don't think, I mean, I like this digital proof concept, that's great. But I was just wondering, I mean, there's no chance that they're gonna take the photo and it's just gonna go into the, sorry, or move the sign. Well, yeah, I was kind of, or there happens to be a tree limb that's just gonna sort of flop down over the sign or something like that. So is there any follow-up at any point, or, would it make sense to add another point in time or something? It's not that hard to go out and take a photo.
There's no secondary or unannounced checks per se. It's left up to the responsibility of the property owner who signs the affidavit certifying that it's going to be maintained.
Yeah.
And it's quite a common practice now with a lot of jurisdictions, shifting the responsibility for posting notices to the applicant. And some jurisdictions actually require that the applicant go to a sign company and have the sign printed at their expense. The county at this point will be maintain the sign and provide the sign to them at the time of noticing for the application prior to the hearing examiner's decision. But
And it seems like this might actually even strengthen the requirement that the sign be maintained, right?
it's codifying it in code.
Yeah, I mean,
And
because otherwise you could post it and then it just kind of falls apart. I mean,
Well,
we've all seen that.
There's
but-
periodic inspections on
Yeah.
a project. Is that one of the things that the inspector would have on his checklist, that the sign is up?
I do not believe that would fall within this purview. That would be more of a building inspector and during a building construction project, and this would be specific to land use approvals prior to the building.
Anything else on these?
I just have one question. I mean, it says so sometimes it can take 2 hours. I don't think there's very many places in Thurston County that takes an hour to get from here to, and then an hour back. So I'd be curious, what's the average time it takes? What's the average amount of time that's, because, I mean, you say an hour. I mean, there's a couple of places outside of Yelm that I can think of that might take you an hour to get to.
We get charged an hour.
There's
by
also the
staff.
installation of-
I live 20 minutes from here and 10 minutes from the county line. So,
It's not just necessarily the driving part. There's the having to hammer in the stakes, having to find a location. And they're shifting the responsibility to the property owner, who can then know their site and find the most appropriate location that falls within the confines of our regulations to both post a sign while protecting their property. And if they have landscaping or if they have a fence, they can use the fence. It's kind of left open to them rather than the county coming out and figuring out where to put it without anything like that. And with respect to the general times, I did pull about 6 projects that spanned over about 2 years. And there were from 15 minutes to 30 minutes there. So that roughly anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half of time dedicated to both driving, posting, returning, and then following the completion of the process, returning to pick up the sign and bring it back. So 2 hours is quite far, but it's still quite a significant amount of time with about 35 to 40 applications a year.
And the county was charging these developers for a county person to go out and post a sign. And so now they'll be able to do this themselves and save that cost. So this is a win-win for everybody. All right. Anybody else have anything? Okay, well, we'll move on to our next. I thank you guys very much, and we'll see you next time. We'll move on to item 5 of our agenda, work session, our 7th work session on the Grand Mound sub-area plan with Caitlin Nelson.
Good evening, planning commissioners. My name is Caitlin Nelson. Like you mentioned, we are on our 7th work session for Grand Mound sub-area plan. Let me share my screen. For this work session, please hold the questions and discussion. At previous work sessions, the planning commission had made several recommendations on the draft code that we were reviewing and several land use amendments, including expansions to the urban growth area. And the remaining decision on this project is on the sub-area plan itself. After the planning commission makes a recommendation, the land use amendment requests that include an urban growth area expansion will go to the urban growth management committee which is a requirement in the countywide planning policies for the consideration of UGA expansion. And then after they provide a recommendation to the board will then review this project, the planning commission's recommendation. And will recommend. Within the sub-area plan draft, demographic information has been added that includes several quick facts for the census boundary, like median income, education level, and race and ethnicity. It includes a statement on limitations and how certain populations may be under or overcounted, and an explanation of the population and boundary differences between the urban growth area, sub-area, and the census boundary that is used for census data. You can see the UGA boundary in bold on this map and the census boundary in red. Goals in the sub-area plan should be in addition to those that already exist in the comp plan without being redundant. And a list of applicable goals in the comp plan are in the staff memo, but this is a general summary of them. Some of the objectives include encouraging residential development that is compatible, accommodating projected growth in a way that ensures affordable housing, reducing barriers to affordable housing, and creating housing opportunities, providing a variety of housing types, and expanding, supporting affordable housing in other ways. So based on the last work session, a new population and housing growth goal has been drafted with several associated actions. The draft goal at the moment is to develop strategies to preserve existing affordable housing where feasible, to prevent displacement and create social equity. And the actions associated with that are to prioritize infill in areas that create the least amount of displacement, consider the impacts of zoning amendments and regularly evaluate zoning within the UGA. Ensure outreach includes underrepresented community members, especially related to changes that may impact housing, and consider further evaluation of Grand Mountain housing needs in collaboration with the county comprehensive plan. So with all of that, at this time, a motion may be made to approve the draft or not, but for now is discussion needed.
Well, let's start off with our discussion. I know that Commissioner Wheatley sent out a bunch of stuff today. I don't know if anybody has any questions for the commissioner, but if you want to start something, you're welcome to.
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, I guess there's two things. Well, maybe there's three things. Specifically on the demographics new language, I don't see a lot of value in the proposed new language. It doesn't add what I was looking for when I asked for some demographic analysis, and this has been discussed before. What I sent out, I don't know if have people had a chance to look at at least that first email. Yeah, so I was specifically asking for a demographic study of the UGA because it's that's my understanding what the sub area is. Is that correct? It's equivalent to the UGA, and so that is what we should be talking about, and not the CDP. And the difference is that the CDP is bigger. It incorporates a lot more census blocks than just the UGA itself, and you get significantly different demographics depending on if you focus on the UGA or if you focus on the CDP. And it's the UGA that's impacted by the sub-area plan. And my concern is that I can't think, I mean, maybe other people can, but I can't think of a situation in Thurston County that I've ever seen where there's so much, such a pronounced Hispanic community, and there's real potential for displacement. I think this is the most dramatic case of that I've seen for this county. And so I think that deserves a place in the sub-area plan. And I explained at the last meeting that, you know, I'm especially concerned that if somewhat forceful measures aren't put into the current draft of the sub-area plan, that that recognizing this isn't going to lead to the necessary action to actually protect the population. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. And that's, I don't really see value in this new demographic language because it's not getting to the point that I wanted to be demonstrated that you get when you look at the demographics of the UGA itself, and that is that it is over 30% Hispanic. There's a real difference between 19% and 30%. So, and as I pointed out in the email, the other interesting thing when you compare the CDP quick facts to an analysis of the demographics of the UGA itself, a lot of the Hispanic population is located within the UGA. So, I mean, that tells us something, I think we need to respond to. So I'll just stop there for, I mean, you know, I've got other things to say, but if anybody has.
Does anybody have a response for Commissioner Wheatley? Or
Well, I think the only thing, you know, the idea that a lot of that, the Hispanic population is in UGA is because a lot of building has taken place there in the last 10, maybe 15 years. I mean, I don't know if everybody remembers, but like the Wilmosky property, all those houses along the east side of that, none of those were there 20 years ago. I mean, that was, you know, and it's hard to say what it was. I mean, it wasn't like actual farmland. It was more like maybe
1 in 5.
a small, somebody that used to have a farm and just had 5 acres with half a dozen cows on it.
Oh, you mean where it was built?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the farmland tends to be closer to the river. You know, the Wilmosky property, it is, I guess it would technically be farmland. I'd question how good it is, especially if they don't have water rights. So, but I mean, basically what I'm getting at is that area has always been probably, I mean, in Thurston County, the largest Hispanic population has always been in that area.
Right.
It's obviously the reason that it's in the UGA is because that's where there's a lot of new buildings there.
Well, can I respond? to
And I'm a
that?
little concerned about, you know, we hear displacement a lot, but one of our goals for planning, according to the GMA, is affordable housing. And I mean, I would say I'm more worried about the cost of housing than the displacement, because I think to get into displacement, you have to get into how many people own their property and how many rent, and how all that fits in, because I think it's hard to say displacement if a lot of the people own the property, because they're gonna choose to either build a new house or go somewhere else or whatever. If you're renting, but I mean, if you've got a house on 5 acres and you're gonna build 15, you're including, and that doesn't necessarily mean that somebody's getting displaced. So.
Commissioner Wheatley, before I come back to you, I want to go to Commissioner Pestinger. Commissioner Pestinger?
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Commissioner Wheatley. And I think we're talking about potential for displacement and where people live. There's been some presumptions here about people owning homes and where they live in the Grand Mound UGA. I think Commissioner Wheatley has found some already very specific detailed information that the majority of the Hispanic population in the UGA live in a few select trailer parks. They would very likely be renters of at very least the land. So is this the least expensive trailer parks available within Thurston County? I'm guessing it's towards that end. And therefore, any development that would cause for trailer park properties to be converted into housing would likely displace many people here. It's a pretty straight line. Thank you.
And I just kind of want to try and maybe reground the conversation a little bit. So we're talking specifically about like the goals and actions that we're building in. And Helen, you were thinking also maybe about writing in some of like highlighting the fact that this is that's a very high proportion of Hispanic Latino folks. Upwards like 10% over like the background rate. So I think what we're not necessarily what we're trying to do is build in goals and actions that will consider that fact and try to make sure that folks aren't being displaced. So the actual like lots, we're not necessarily, I think it could be useful to kind of like game it out, test case it a little bit, but I think the goal really is to make sure that the goals and actions highlight that and really take those issues into consideration and hold those as kind of, standards for decision-making moving forward.
Yeah, and that's what I was hoping that, that if there were, a little thing about the demographics of the UGA, that would help to explain that, if there was something in the sub-area plan that pointed out this population. And that's the problem that I have with the proposed new language, is it's not geared towards doing what you were just talking about. So it doesn't kind of lead you into the next, the reason for the goals and actions. So that's why I wouldn't want to use this language.
And I think the question I would have would be, one, like, is this like way far outside like common practice to highlight some of those demographic features of like a sub area? Like, is that something that would be kind of difficult? Because it is a snapshot in time. That's the one thing I think about. If there was a section in here that talked about that specific demographic, would that be that hard to, or that complicated to write in?
It sort of depends. Unfortunately, census data is not very accurate. Like you said, it's a snapshot in time. It generalizes a lot. When you get down to the block level, you could compare one area that it's saying has a high number of this population. And then when you look at the map, like I did this morning, it's completely undeveloped. There's nothing there. So it's difficult to figure out exactly where the lines are. So it's easy to say that this may have a higher Hispanic and Latino population, and then that should be considered. Putting the numbers in specifically is a little bit more difficult. But if there was a statement that you wanted to propose to include, to consider that population, then we could definitely do that.
And this would be novel. This is something that the county has never done before in a sub area plan or anything. Is that correct?
I don't know. It's just in this plan. It just wasn't drafted previously.
Chris, do you know if we've ever done anything like that before?
Well, I can say generally, we provide in the comprehensive plan some population and some general information on demographics. But has it been something that we've looked at specifically when we're looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion? No, that is something that is definitely moving into a newer arena when it comes to planning for a number of reasons and good reasons. So does that answer your question?
Well, kind of. I think that, to a certain degrees, I know that I feel like we're kind of getting the cart before the horse. I think that trying to shoehorn this into Grand Mountain sub-area plan when we're gonna be doing this in the comprehensive plan coming up. We're kind of getting the cart before the horse, especially since you're gonna have a lot of time to develop out these policies and goals and action items for the comprehensive plan. So to try to hurry it up and get something in here, especially when it's not even required for it to be in there yet, I think is a little bit of folly. Now, I understand why we should have all these things and working towards it, but having it today is not something that I feel is absolutely necessary when we know that this is coming through. And it probably is not going to have any immediate effect or even any short to medium term effects on what's happening down there, since we're not really making any other changes down in that UGA. We're not, most of our all of our proposals, or all the proposals that came before us, we turned down. The ones that were outside the UGA. So it's not going to change a whole lot of stuff. So my personal feeling is that this can hold off so that way staff has time to develop these kind of policies, goals and outlines, get them into the comprehensive plan, which will then filter down to every other thing else here in all these sub area plans and get taken care of that way in a thoughtful, methodical process. Obviously, I don't have the only words on that. So if you want to start tearing it apart.
Well, I think there might be something there. I think it's probably critical to highlight the differences with the Grand Mountain sub area. So if we were going to rely on the comp plan updates and countywide policies and actions, we would still want to be able to indicate where we have like a specific density of a certain population. So I think that piece makes sense to keep in sub area plans and, to try and break down. I don't know if there are plans to break down all the demographic data countywide and then like look at pockets or clusters or densities. That sounds like a big lift.
Yeah, I mean, that's my concern is, if you wait for that,
You're afraid it's gonna get lost.
it's not gonna get to this sub area plan anytime soon. It's gonna be years and years. And it doesn't, and we already know, regardless of whether it's pretty, I think the data is pretty clear that the UGA is, has a notably high concentration of a population that is probably at a high risk.
I'm just not, I'm not arguing any of that. I think that's
Yeah.
absolutely true. I just think that is not terribly actionable on anything that wouldn't happen before comp plan.
Well, I had a couple questions. I
Yeah,
had
go
a
ahead,
question
please.
and so can we get some clarification? So we have the RCW and the WACs that have been written since the last comp plan was written. And we're looking at something that is, it's part of the GMA. The sub area plan is part of the GMA. So I guess I'm a little unclear on why the current law doesn't apply to something that's being worked on now. Why is that?
Are you asking staff?
Well, I'm asking the universe, I guess. Whoever thinks they have an answer, and I'd like to understand the thought process behind that, or because you said that it doesn't. The stuff that's
It's
currently
not required. It's not required.
yeah,
to
the
be in
stuff
this.
that's currently in the GMA, you're saying is not required for this sub area plan that we're looking at right now. And I guess I'd like some clarification on that.
Sure.
So what we've been scoped to do for the sub-area plans, because we've got not just Grand Mountain, but we also have the Nisqually that have been on our dockets for a number of years, is to bring it into compliance or into the same information and in alignment is the word I was looking for, with our current adopted comprehensive plan. So our current comprehensive plan is been adopted and doesn't need any updates until 2025. So that's kind of the vision for the county at this point in time. So that is what we're doing, is bringing a very old sub-area plan up to in alignment with the current comprehensive plan.
Okay. Well, yeah.
I think this language in here doesn't hurt. And usually like the problem would be is if we had, goals and policies that at the comp plan level that spoke to these issues, it would be redundant. But since they aren't in the comp plan, I think it actually makes sense to be building them into current work. I don't think it hurts. And I think eventually we'll be in a situation where like this language will probably, copy paste it, put it in the comp plan. And eventually this will just be redundant and you can look at just keeping like demographic data moving forward. But I think it makes sense to have these in here, given the time frame. I think it doesn't hurt at this point. I would argue that it even like gives us some practice in what we're gonna need to be doing for the comp plan update. So I think it's responsible. I think it doesn't hurt. And if the real issue here is like that we haven't highlighted this demographic anomaly, that seems like it could be addressed.
Go ahead, Barry.
I guess
I
I'm
agree.
looking,
Go ahead, Barry.
okay, I guess I'm looking at it from the goals and objectives that were put together by staff. I think they hit the main points of everything that's been discussed here tonight. The only thing that it doesn't specifically point out is the high percentage of Hispanic population in the UGA, which is what your point is, Helen. But it does specifically state under comprehensive plan and housing, goal 1, to meet the housing needs of the existing and projected population with rental and purchase opportunities for all income levels. And then it goes into very specific objectives to do that. And then under goal 2, it says to promote safe and decent housing diversity that meets the changing population needs and are in close proximity to jobs, transportation, daily activities, and goes into specific objectives for that. And then to reserve and maintain existing affordable housing, enhance the quality of substandard housing, and to provide decent and affordable housing, goal 3, with an objective for that. It covers, I think, the goals and objectives are right on track. What it doesn't do is specifically point out the diversity percentages for the Hispanic population. I'm not sure that it needs to do that, because what we're doing is we're putting one demographic ahead of everything else when the goals and objectives encompass all the diversities and all the equities of all the people, regardless of whether they're Hispanic, Black, African-American, or Indian. And there's a large population of Indians down there as well. I just would say, I think it meets the objectives of bringing it up to date with the diversity issue that you brought out in a previous meeting, which I'm glad you did, and the staff put this together. I don't know that we need to go into more definition of that diversity group right now.
Commissioner Pessinger?
I agreed with Commissioner Day's recommendation. I also was reminded of Commissioner Hansen's comment on this a few meetings ago, where he said, when we have the opportunity, we know better, we could do better, we should do better. And I think that's well said.
Go ahead, Commissioner Simmons.
I think I agree with Barry. The goals are set out, and when I read through this, I thought they were pretty clear and pretty, comprehensive and good. I guess what I'm starting to get wrapped around is we're singling out the Hispanic population as if they are the low end. And I don't know, maybe their economic issues are that, but it seems like we're putting them there without really knowing. And, for all I know, they could, I've seen congregating, like the Hispanics, they're congregate together because that's who they know and that's where they know. But they might not be in the economic situations. For all I know, they could be better off than me.
Yeah.
So that's my problem right now is I feel like we're putting them all in the trailer park and we're going to displace them. I don't think that's true. And so that's where my concern is. We're singling out, like Barry says, a specific group, and that's not what we should be doing.
Right.
Yeah.
And the plan, the goals and objectives in the plan don't point out a specific group, but they address all of the different elements of the different groups based on economic status, not based on race or ethnicity.
Yeah, well, your point is well taken too. I mean, like the data, it shows that there's a Hispanic population in all of those blocks, right? So it's across, I mean, there's more densities in certain areas than not, but it's across the whole you know, there's not a single block that doesn't have a Hispanic population in it. And you're right, you know, there are also ones that, you know, and so it's just the Hispanic population I was singling out because it's so significantly large. And I want to remind people that one of the aspects of that I also pointed to is my concern that the public involvement process. I mean, if this work had been done earlier, there could have maybe have been a better outreach, you know, a multilingual outreach that would have improved the process. But yeah, your point is well taken, and I can see what you're saying, except I still think that there should be language about the demographics. And I didn't craft an alternative language, but I believe it could be very short. I mean, sort of going to what you said, I mean, it doesn't have to be as long as, you know, the proposed language at all. It's just to make the point to lead into the goals and policies like you were talking about.
And
So it doesn't have to be a big
I think I'm kind of, you know, Barry's argument made an impression, and I think where it leads me is like trying to roll it up and just like put it in a sentence, I think takes us in the wrong direction. If we want this, what we really need is each of these sub areas, we need a demographic analysis. We need a table that says that, so you can compare and you can understand what it looks like there. So when you're making decisions, you know what the population looks like.
Is that something that we're kind of pushing towards with the new comp plan, isn't it? That there's going to be more detailed analysis of the actual identities that live within these areas.
We're looking into specifically what are our requirements for around those pieces. We're still waiting on the guidance from Commerce, correct?
Commissioner Pessinger, you had more?
Yes, thank you. I agree with Barry as well, although I don't think that anyone was arguing that we should only highlight the Hispanic population. I think exactly what Commissioner Day was just suggesting is all we need is simply a comparative chart of here's the census data for demographics across the county, and here's the census data for the population of the UGA. And if we can just simply insert that, that doesn't seem very divisive. It would provide, you know, a lot of satisfaction to a lot of people in this commission and in the community, and that we're at least acknowledging the demographic differences. And then the goals do seem to work well following off of that data.
Thank you, Commissioner Halverson.
I was just gonna ask, do we even have that data?
At this time, no, it would take staff quite a significant time to put all that information together.
And that's, okay.
not that much data. I'm not sure it would take a really significant amount of time. I mean, I can share my,
I mean, for the appreciate
UGA.
the information and the analysis that was provided to us, but
you talking about for the UGA itself or the larger?
well, what I heard was a chart for the entire county and then insert the appropriate information.
That's what Kevin.
So, but it wouldn't just be it would have to be full demographics. And again, we would have to do our due diligence. It would take us a significant amount of time to ensure that we were pulling the right information from the right sources and overlapping that appropriately.
It sounds like we might be one line away from having this wrapped up.
Well, that part anyway.
Well, not to
Yeah.
get too hard here, but
Yeah.
part of this was at the last meeting, we were down to one issue and we were going to move
Right.
forward after that one
No.
issue.
Right. I just have maybe a couple comments on the goals,
Okay.
but.
But if we can, if we acknowledge that there is a higher percentage of Hispanic people in that community than in Thurston County in general, does that satisfy enough that we can move forward with this? With the new goals that staff has put together, new goals and action items that staff has put together? Just acknowledging that there is a higher incidence of Hispanic population there than elsewhere.
Or, I mean, I'd be satisfied, I mean, what we were sort of moving towards is that I mean, I think the point that, I think it was Derek who brought it up and then Kevin who reiterated that there's a significant, that the UGA demographics are different to Thurston County demographics or even, the CDP, the Grand Mountain CDP's demographics. So I think what we were talking about is finding a way to say that. And if, I suppose it depends on how fine grained it needs to be, but I guess I find it hard to believe that it would be that time consuming to make a general statement based on the 2020 census data that's readily available.
Well, does it need to be fine grained at all? Can it
That's
just
what
be a
I'm
general?
saying. I think you could say it and it's a strong, I mean, the whole point is it's a strong enough difference
Mhm.
that you could say it's different, right? And that has to be taken.
So
into
we really
account.
could be one line away on this.
Well, I'm not sure because I don't have that line.
Well, I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know if, does it matter to you if we know the exact percentages or not? Or
No,
just
no.
that we know for sure that it's higher down there than anywhere else in the county?
Yeah, because what we're looking for is leading into why this is being emphasized in the housing policy chapter of the sub-area plan, right? That there's a, that there's a significant difference in this UGA that is being noted, and that it's being noted that this requires a setting of goals and policies to address it within the sub-area plan.
Yeah, and essentially it's like, we're trying to leave breadcrumbs for future decision-making, right? That's
Yeah.
really the goal.
Yeah,
And my guess is, well, I think at some point, like, the county really needs a way to, like, a query protocol for demographic data at any polygon level. That's, I think,
that might be coming down for comp plan stuff. We don't know that yet because Commerce hasn't decided, but hopefully
I
they are
mean,
going
that's
to.
what Commerce is gonna tell you you need. So,
Well, hopefully they provide some tools or at least some direction to develop the tools. Go ahead, Jim.
Oh, great. Services tomorrow.
That'd be great. Commissioner Pestinger again.
Thank you. I would encourage, if we are going to use just a simple sentence like the population is higher, I would encourage us to say significantly higher. I believe that
Okay.
the countywide data is approximately 13% Hispanic, and that Helen has found approximately 31% Hispanic for the UGA. That's pretty significant.
I don't think anybody would complain about that, would they?
Or did you
I have
sketch
a
out some
recommendation.
draft?
Do you have,
language?
draft
Yeah,
recommendation?
and based on what Helen and Kevin and Derek and Joel have all said, I mean, after the paragraph ends, some other race, period. There is a significant difference in the Hispanic population of this UGA than any other part or portion of Thurston County.
Well, see, that's the part where you might, I mean, I'm not sure that you'd be comfortable, that staff would be comfortable with
It's a little too definitive.
that. Yeah, it's a bit too.
So if we said that like
Precise.
preliminary analysis indicates a higher, like a significantly higher proportion of Hispanic residents in the Grand Mountain sub-area, something kind of that, to that effect. That kind of, that's defensible.
It's defensible and it's more generalized. Yes.
So we'll add that amendment in.
Yeah, and it doesn't make any of the value statements I think Jim was getting towards, like, we're not assuming that that means that it's all lower income residents, but we still have those policies to help ensure.
Commissioner Wheatley, without.
Well, I mean, but we're still leading into the goals of preserving affordable housing and preventing displacement. I mean, but yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, I mean, we have that now, so,
It
right,
leads into those goals.
yeah. Yeah,
What-
as long as the language leads into that, explains it, and like you said, leaves that notice that the county is aware that the demographics matter. And that it has paid attention to that within
Do
this
do you folks understand that?
sub-area plan.
That amendment? Okay. Without ignoring your other two items, would that be satisfactory for pushing forward on this?
Okay, can we restate, I mean, let's hear it again. Or
All right,
a
I
rough
didn't catch it all,
approximation.
I think it's preliminary
Preliminary
analysis
analysis.
indicates a significantly higher than usual or normal, higher than normal,
An average.
than countywide.
Then can't, yeah.
Yeah, higher than countywide proportion of Hispanic residents.
So if you guys can post just a moment, we're gonna put it up on the screen so that you don't have to continue to remember your words.
This is not what I'm. Sticky notes and
Can't
whiteboards.
keep up with this either.
You're right. Yeah. Just a little bit more on the screen so we can. I'll raise that. Thank you so much. And it should be up the Grand Mound UGA indicates.
You Katie Portered them?
Okay. That makes sense to me. Are you guys able to read that? The bottom line? Kevin, can you see that?
No, but I was comfortable with it as it was read.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Helps. Yep.
okay,
So I
we're,
can take that.
we're gonna move forward with that, and Commissioner Wheatley has a couple other quick items that she wants to discuss.
Right, so just going into the goals and policies, I mean, again, I'm seeing it as a first bite at the apple of doing the right thing. I feel that, some of these goals. Yeah, I'm not, I was gonna propose that I think it would sink, so I won't, that we have language. That it also acknowledges the lack of alignment between the current, the Growth Management Act as it stands and the current comprehensive plan. Because I mean, again, I would like to see it, I would really like to see a nod to an acknowledgement of that, just an understanding that
I
this
think that brings
area
on
plan.
liability to the county then, doesn't it?
Sorry.
Wouldn't that bring on a liability to the county to say, we know that?
Yeah, well, I don't know. And that's why I asked the question earlier. I'm trying to understand why. If it's, if this is moving forward after 2022,
Well,
why GMA requirements
I-
up to that time don't apply to this plan.
I think the way that I understand it, and maybe I
Yeah.
understand this wrong, is that we are trying to get these sub-area plans in alignment with our current comp plan, and our current comp plan, it goes by the rules that were
No, I get that,
enshrined a
yeah.
while ago. So we don't need to get them current to the current GMA. We need to get our sub-areas in alignment with our current comp plan, not with our future comp plan.
And
Except, okay, yeah, maybe you can
I
explain.
think there might be, so I don't know, and without going back to the actual language of the legislation. I wonder if there's a requirement for work done under the GMA to meet these new standards versus just comp plan updates to meet these new standards.
Ah.
So that would be my question. I do not have an answer. Or
I
even
would love an
speculation.
answer to that question. Can we ask that question? Can we post that in a
Well,
way that? it
I think
makes
the
it
assumption is
future-
that since Commerce has not told us that we have to do this,
Well, I think so, and what I think we need to figure out is whether the RCW requires, like, this is a new requirement for work done under the GMA. Or if there is a specific stipulation in the RCW that says, once Commerce has provided guidance, then, and my guess is it probably says Commerce shall provide guidance, but it probably also doesn't say, and everybody needs to wait for the guidance.
I can't imagine that they were expecting volunteer planning commissions to find the legal compliance with this new stuff instead of Commerce filtering it down through government entities.
The legislation.
wrong.
The legislators often don't think that hard about it.
So I can answer a portion of that. So when the law changed, the law required the counties planning under GMA, Thurston County is one of them, to make the changes that they added to the housing element upon their next update cycle.
So where would? that
So it's the
was-
update cycle that triggers the need to do it. So
Okay,
Yes.
yeah, we're essentially asking for things that are for that.
so this is the
requirement.
so that's why some jurisdictions are holding off on anything like this because they wanted to wait until, I mean, I read that one of the cities here or something put a pause on certain things because they want to wait.
Wait for the.
It's
That
like-
could be, that wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah, they're
Alright.
underfunded and understaffed too.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay, so that helps.
That number two for you?
Yeah, but I would still, in the spirit of doing the right thing, maybe like to see some of these goals strengthened a bit. And I would like to propose, and it can certainly be shot down, as so many proposals are, but with due consideration, and I appreciate that. A strengthening of the goals, they would be built upon, I think. So the first thing I wanted to suggest is why not put into oh, I'm looking at the wrong ones in here, into prioritize infill in areas that create the least amount of displacement.
You're in housing?
Housing goal one, action
Goal
one.
one, yeah.
We also have them up on the screen.
In the proposed language. New language, housing goal one, action one. Prioritize infill in areas that create the least amount of displacement. I mean, I guess my question on that was, well, how do you know unless you do something to find out? And so I wanted to propose adding to action one, conduct a multilingual household survey of housing needs of residents within the UGA as an action.
Is that something that's already being taken care of in Thurston 2045?
Depends on the commerce guy.
Well, That's something the commissioners are gonna have to put money for.
Yeah.
That's a big expense.
Yeah.
That would
Well-
that would be a large.
So how do you, I mean, because what I'm aiming for is ways to turn these, I mean, how do you prioritize? If you don't know, if you don't have the information you need.
What you wanna do is turn action items into deliverables.
um,
And that's
Okay.
what a lot of.
And you want better
organizations
data.
and Agencies do. And the problem with deliverables is they come with a price tag. And a lot of agencies have tried to figure out what that price tag is gonna be, and they haven't come up with a metric yet.
mhm.
And what you're just talking about, has a pretty significant price tag to it. That the commissioners would have to budget for. And
Easier ways to do it.
yeah, there might be, but I don't know what it is. I mean, I've worked with a lot of government agencies. And they go with goals, actions, and deliverables.
Yeah.
Those are the three things they work
I
Well,
guarantee
exactly.
Google
Well-
knows exactly who lives exactly where.
on. Yeah.
Okay, so so how do you say that the action is going to turn into a deliverable?
That none of the county's goals and actions have deliverables specifically. If you take a look at all the county actions and goals, or goals and actions, they don't have specific deliverables
They
because that,
can't either.
they can't, because
Yeah.
it comes with a price tag.
We're
And
not,
what they try to do, just for conversation, is that community planning, economic development, the folks that work over here in your permits section and stuff, they have little metrics that they use to determine how many widgets of this type are processed in a year, how many widgets of this type are processed in a year, to try to determine if they're on target to meet certain goals and actions. Those are deliverables that they have to actually have staff perform analysis on to get that information.
So the way this works is, I mean, so that you have this language, then you have the comp plan revision,
Right.
and then this language gets turned into action at that point then.
Well, actually, we're putting goals and actions in this sub-area plan, which was unusual to begin with. I don't
Okay.
think it's wrong. I think it's doing the right thing, as Joel's mentioned a couple times. But I think the county commissioners, when they come around to the the CMA, that they're gonna have to put some money behind actually doing some analysis for some of this stuff.
Staff, did you have something?
So I think what's being asked, Commissioner Wheatley, is so we put these in and they get adopted. And now something comes in the Grand Mountain sub-area plan, like a land use change. How do we then implement what we're seeing on the screen? Is that,
Right.
okay? So one of the ways that staff does that is when we receive that application, the applicant should, and if they don't, we would ask for additional information, answer the question, how they are not creating displacement, and to prove that through information and data. And that information then comes to to the Planning Commission for review and vetting and asking for additional information if need be. So that's one of the ways we implement some of these actions.
That's how they gather the analysis.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, all right, I understand that better now, all right. Let me see if there's anything else then. Okay, so the next one is that's gonna be with the comp plan revision.
While Commissioner Wheatley is looking over her notes, and I'm going to come back to her, is there anybody else that has something that they want to review? We're back to you.
Yeah,
Commissioner Wheatley.
I think that works then, because the other
Okay.
ones don't follow then.
Thank you. Thank you.
Could you go to your last slide, please?
With that, I would be very happy to entertain a motion.
I'd like to make one. Like to make a motion to recommend approval of the Grand Mountain sub-area plan as amended.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the Grand Mountain sub-area plan as amended tonight. With that, I would call for any further discussion? I'd call for the vote.
Commissioner Day,
Aye.
Commissioner Nelson,
Aye.
Commissioner Helverson,
Aye.
Commissioner Hanson,
Aye.
Commissioner Simmons,
All right.
Commissioner Wheatley, Commissioner Pessinger,
Aye.
Commissioner Casino.
Aye. That passes unanimously 8-0. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Caitlin. And Maya, and there was a lot of people on that. All right, well, with that, we're going to move on to other business, which is item number 6, the subcommittee report that on findings from the feedback from the year 2022. And I don't know who's going to take lead on this particular issue. Does staff have this? Or are we going to give this to Barry or Scott or?
I didn't bring my notes. I
Okay.
gave them to staff.
Oh, what a cheat.
Well,
Well, that's
I put them all together and I didn't put any names on them. I just put them all on one.
Collated
sheet
them?
And collated them. Because
So
I didn't know if people wanted to be,
yeah, there's
identified or not.
no
So I-
requirement for anybody to claim any of these ideas.
Yeah. I wanted it to be more anonymous, I didn't know how this worked. I'd never done it before.
I'll just say that unfortunately, my computer got dropped a couple of weeks ago. And so while I was shopping for a new computer and trying to get mine fixed, trying to get it buried to decide how we were going to divide up the list, I hadn't even gotten that far yet, so.
I had input from everybody.
Okay.
Except for you.
Okay.
And Eric.
I didn't have any
I
input.
know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, then I'm fine with whatever. Commissioner
Do
Halverson
you have
is.
those? Do we want to go through them?
pause for a moment. We can print them so that you have them.
Okay.
And,
I hope you randomized them.
bear with me for a moment. I'm gonna have to step away and then, nope.
While you're doing that, I'm gonna move on to Scott's issue with that he wanted to talk about the wireless code update.
Yeah.
So why don't we move on to that?
this would include my only addition to that list. I recently was sent the information that the county commissioners got for the wireless code update, which included the planning commission's minority report, which I have issues with. I think number one, I'm not real excited about the planning commission minority report calling into question the integrity of the consultant that the county hired. I'm really not happy about the fact that the minority report specifically said that the majority of the planning commission did not consider public testimony. I mean, I've been doing this for a while. Whether or not I agree with people does not mean if you say something and I say, well, I don't think that makes sense, or no, I don't want to do that, does not mean that I did not consider your testimony. And specifically, I'll read for you guys, because I know most of you probably don't have this. The first two examples of public comment requests that were ignored says the need for a consultant who is more interested in representing the desires of the community and the county than the desires of the wireless industry. Number two, need for a stakeholder group that was not unfairly outweighed by the wireless industry representatives and that had proper process for thoroughly communicating public requests that had come up during work sessions to the whole planning commission. For those of you that weren't there, I believe the stakeholder committee that we put together was 4 people who were decidedly against what we were doing. 2 planning commissioners and 2 members of the
Industry.
wireless community. I believe it was 1 person from Verizon and 1 person from AT&T. So I guess my request moving forward is that we stick to facts in reports. And number 2, I mean, which I guess I will do when we actually get to the rules and procedures, I'm going to request that minority reports be forwarded to the entire planning commission before being sent to the board. So, if anybody else has any.
I'm just going to add on to that a little bit with some personal experience on one of those items, and that was the idea of I've had a personal conversation with one of the county commissioners at one point about the issue of, was somebody feeling like they weren't heard because the commission, and including me, did not agree. And when I had that conversation with the commissioner, they seemed to understand that from some people's perspectives, not finding agreement might feel like not being heard. And I assured that commissioner that I believe that we go through great lengths to let everybody have their moment to talk. I try very hard not to cut anybody off and give everybody an opportunity to speak. So I explained to that commissioner that I did not agree with that assessment, that I think everybody got a chance to talk, and that if they didn't find agreement, it's because they didn't find agreement, not because the conversation was shut down. And I believe that the commissioner believes that. That was the indication that I got. Does anybody else want to address any of these issues on?
Well, I
If
have
you
a
have something, please
question.
do.
Yeah, I was just trying to look at the last minute. I mean, were we going to have a subcommittee looking at
It's right
this?
now, staff is still,
Yeah,
and this is higher than CPED staff, is looking at trying to have consistent rules between all boards and commissions. And we were thinking that we would do little bits of it, pieces of it here and there. The one thing we had to do was change our rules to say we're going to be at 3,000 Pacific. The other stuff we didn't really have to do yet. And while we do have some autonomy in how we set our rules, we don't want to go way off the reservation here. And I want to see what the county comes up with trying to have some continuity between all the boards and commissions. Because otherwise it's going to be a nightmare for staff, and I don't want the planning commission to go rogue. And I think that we need to be heard the way we want to be heard, but we can't expect the world either. That makes sense?
And they've told us that they do it in the next 30 days.
Oh, have they said that?
Yeah. So
Thank you very much.
Jamie Caldwell has already provided the final draft for the commissioners for review.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, that's more than I knew. So hopefully we see that. Commissioner Pessinger, you had something on that?
Just addressing the comments about the minority report.
Please do.
I was the author of that minority report and I stand by it. And I can agree that we have differences of opinion about characterizations of the consultant and of the weighting of the working committee, but I stand by my statements.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know if anybody has seen these before,
I didn't.
Other
send them out
than-
to everybody.
other than Barry and maybe Scott and maybe staff. So if you guys want to take a look at this real quick, and kind of,
Is it just random or, yeah, okay.
I just took information and plugged it onto a Word program and then
boy, there's a lot more here than I was expecting. This might take me more, how is our? So our February 15th meeting doesn't look like it's going to be a super heavy and lengthy meeting, is it? This is thick enough that maybe we should take some time to digest it and come back and have the conversation next time. So maybe add this to, unless anybody has really got something they got to say about it today. But I would like to move this to the next meeting that we have a time slot for.
I mean, I didn't change anybody's wording or anything on anything. I
Okay.
imported it the way I received it. So
No, thank you very much for even doing that. That's asking quite a bit to ask people to bare their souls and angst to you.
Quick request,
Please.
it needs to be emailed to me.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So next on our list would be agenda item number 7, which would be a staff update.
Here, so it's been requested and I think staff has been doing this to the best of our ability in timely fashion, but to make sure that the planning commission is aware of when items that come through the planning commission are going to the board. So I want to make sure that everybody is aware that the wireless public hearing is coming up on the 7th of February. And there is a scheduled follow-up briefing with the board on the 9th. So Tuesday and Thursday, we get to talk about wireless with the board.
Do you remember what time that public hearing is going to be held? 3:30?
5:30.
5:30.
So that was the 7th?
Yeah.
So more than the whatever specific number that is of us go, does that have to be reported somehow?
If there might be the possibility of a quorum. Is there anybody here that's planning on going to the public hearing for the wireless for A19?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. Can you notice that the planning commission might be in attendance?
Make sure that is appropriately noticed.
Do we have time to do that?
Before the 7th?
Okay,
Does
you,
that actually need to be noticed?
well, it is technically already a public meeting. So yeah, but it's not to be, I don't.
And it's not a meeting of the planning commission. Business.
So we'll look into it to see if we actually need, because you're not attending as a commission, you're attending as citizens,
That's it, okay.
unless somebody is specifically going on behalf of the planning commission.
To BOCC public hearing, please. Say all you want as your personal self, that would be fantastic, but please don't represent the planning commission at a public hearing.
We don't. It's just commissioners.
All right,
I have one more update.
one more update.
One more update. So we are preparing a short course that will be held on 1st of March. So it is a planning commission normal meeting, but the short course will be open to the public. It won't just be y'all. It will be other municipalities will be noticed of the short course as well. It will be a hybrid and in-person event.
At the regularly scheduled March 1st planning commission meeting.
Correct.
Okay, what does that do, Chris?
What does that do? That is actually going to provide those who attend information and background on planning protocols, rules, requirements, all that sort of thing. GMA.
Yeah.
Learning GMA.
It's the one that we did online.
Yeah,
You sent us
it's.
the
Right.
links.
Are we gonna go through OPMA stuff
We're
again?
going to go through
That would be
OPMA.
great. if we went
Yes,
through-
because then we will get all recertified.
Has everybody actually done their OPMA training online
Yes.
and gotten your certificate and handed it into staff? Have you?
I think I did.
If
can't
you
remember
guys
if
might
I
want to
did it
double
for-
check that.
Conservation district.
I know I've done it in the last couple of years, but I don't know.
I
if
think you need to do one for the planning
I
commission, so
probably
staff has
can.
it on file, so
I'm sure you did one for the city.
I'm sure you probably
I
have
did,
two.
and I've done it for the port, but I don't know if I've given the certificate to the county or.
We maybe check and let us know if we
Check.
don't have it on file.
Yes, we can check, and the March 1st, if you don't have to take it separately. It will provide you that opportunity and we will fill out those certificates.
Yeah, and if you got time to watch the video again in the meantime. Wouldn't hurt.
So it will not just be OPMA, but PRA as well, the Public Records Act.
Can I ask a
Yeah.
question?
Yeah.
I'm getting a lot of questions already about the comprehensive plan review and the timeline and what comes first and when and all of that.
You should send them over to staff. We can answer all of those questions.
So
Oh.
can we, I mean, can you kind of give us an update? Because we talked about it last time and I think it had been walked back a bit that, or am I remembering that right? That like the assessment part was gonna come forward at some point? Like at the last meeting that we had, it was the joint meeting with the
With Olympia?
with Olympia. We talked about it a bit, but it was a bit vague in my mind.
Staff are compiling.
So staff is.
Yeah, so-
Right, so staff is working on compiling all kinds of information, including going through the checklist to see where the Commerce checklist, yes, that's where we always start. To see where the different pieces that we're gonna need to bring up to speed, as far as the pieces of the comprehensive plan. We do have a meeting scheduled for, let's say early March with the Board of County Commissioners to discuss the scope of the, Thurston 2045. Because there is a big budget element that is part of that discussion. What do they want us to do? How do they want us to go about doing it? There's also grant funding, so we need to be prepared and understand and know what our scope of work is so that we can prepare for the grant funding that's coming down from the from Commerce. So that's the big, high general overview of where we're at the moment. If any of you come across anybody that has more specific questions, please do send them our way. We can provide them that information.
Okay.
And what's the timeline for that interaction with the county commissioners?
I'm sorry.
The, basically taking the scope to the commissioners.
So let's see, I know we've scheduled it. I just don't remember offhand. There's my.
This is probably a good time as any to remind everybody that our docket is super full and overflowing and probably has years and years worth of stuff on there. But a lot of what we're doing in 2023, including getting Grand Mound sub-area plan, which I'm very grateful that we are done with, are necessary components to make sure that the comp plan happens effectively and efficiently and on time. So diligently working through this docket and getting this stuff done, I think is going to make 2024 and 2025 much easier if we get this stuff done now. So I do appreciate getting Grand Mound done. Hopefully we can get through Nisqually without 7 work sessions. Maybe we can get it done in 2 or 3. That would be awesome in a public hearing, but not that I want to take shortcuts in the work, but I want to get the work done. So. Does anybody else have anything? Do you have any other staff updates?
I have one about the update. I'm just gonna keep beating the same dead horse. Every time I hear the word scope when it comes to this. The GMA comprehensive plan review is supposed to be open to is supposed to open Thurston County's entire comp plan. So, I mean, I just want people to keep that in mind because back when I first got involved, that's what we were doing was the county somebody had requested a change and the county commissioner said, nope, that's not what we're doing right now. And the hearings board said, what it's the comprehensive plan review. You have, if it comes up, you have to at least consider it. You know, so just a reminder to everybody of this.
So a comp plan is not necessarily thought of as a periodic update, but as a repeal and replace.
It will not necessarily a repeal and replace. There may be chapters depending on how, like the housing chapter may very well be a repeal and replace. But there may just be some minor updates to different elements or chapters within the comprehensive plan that are just text amendments. But
everything is up for repeal and replace if the county chose.
potentially.
And so I just want to make doubly clear, I think I've mentioned this before, but at this point, there's no plan to include the planning commission on, or even loop them into the scoping of the comp plan update before it goes to the Board of County Commissioners.
That is not the standard protocol. The Board of County Commissioners, that is a comment that any one of the planning commissioners would like to make to the board.
I'm just asking the question.
Yes.
So
But
that's
that is
true.
not, that is a true statement as it is not a standard process.
I think generally speaking, the BOCC always defines the scoping on every issue.
Right, of course, and they
Yeah.
should. And on something like the comp plan update, I would expect that the planning commission would have input on the staff recommendations of scoping. So I find this honestly really, really problematic. Still do, did before. And I'm not satisfied with the answers and the way that this is being kind of described. I would actually like to have this as an issue, a specific issue on our next agenda, if we can. And I think
second that.
we should send a formal letter or propose a resolution from the
That
planning
the planning
commission.
commission be looped into scoping for
Yeah.
comp plan development.
Absolutely.
And can I add something? Cause I'm really into public participation planning. I think that we should be involved in that. I would like, we had a presentation of the public participation plan. I think I could easily come up with some comments on that. And I think it'd be appropriate for the planning commission to be discussing the public participation plan as well. It's
You don't
very
think that would be,
appropriate.
that wouldn't be encompassed in the scoping in general? You don't think that needs to be outlined separately?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess
would
I
be
would
part of
like to draw that out as something that is that I regard as a legitimate and important part of the planning commission's contribution to this process. I think it's kind of normal for the planning commissions to be, or even, imperative to be offering advice on the public participation plan.
Fair. Commissioner Pessinger?
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Commissioner Day's comments, but I also have a separate comment. I noticed that the January 11th meeting agenda for our meeting here, underneath the agenda item for the Grand Mound sub-area update, it mentions specifically that a public hearing has already been held and therefore no more public comment will be taken on that topic. I found that really useful. It was listed under, I think, a couple different agenda items where we'd already had public hearing. That was not the case on today's meeting agenda. So if it's possible to continue that previous pattern, that was really useful.
Thank you. On item number 5, it actually says that we've already had the hearing, so no more public comment on it, so we can have that line on everything. That'd be great. We have at least 3 commissioners that would like to make a recommendation to the BOCC that the planning commission is looped in on comp plan stuff. Are there 2 other commissioners that would like to make that recommendation to? I see a nod here. I got Kevin, Joel, Derek, Ellen. We got one more person that would like to make that recommendation to the planning, to the BOCC.
I'd like to know what that would mean.
Okay, that's good enough for me. Is there something that staff can do to put something together for us to make a formal recommendation to the BOCC that we're looped in on the scoping of comp plan update?
You're asking me to write a draft motion?
Well, let's talk about this a little bit. How in depth do we want to make a recommendation to the BOCC?
Excuse me.
What specifically would you like that recommendation to include? Just,
I think it would be pretty high level. It'd be something along the lines of, substantive involvement in scoping before it goes to the Board of County Commissioners. I think it's really honestly really odd that the Planning Commission doesn't have, we haven't even been told what the county is planning for the scope. We haven't been able to give any input. I think Scott brought this up last time, we hear things from people all the time. And part of what our job is to do is to bring community input into these processes and oversight. And we're not being given the opportunity to do that the way that this is working. And I know this is not a normal way to do comp plan updates. It may be the way it's been done here, but it's not a normal process by any means.
you think you could develop a motion right now?
I think so.
Well, before you say the
Okay.
motion though, I mean, I would also like some confirmation that we should be involved in the public participation plan as well. I think that's very normal as well.
I think there's a quote in the feedback that says, quote, provide leadership for public participation programs.
Yeah. And that it's just done, it's like expected. That's one of the jobs the planning commission to do.
I don't think we're gonna work that one.
Well, but I would like it included because
Okay.
I'd like some clear direction from the Board of Commissioners on that.
So, and
I
I,
know it's, helps.
yeah,
Kind of dropped right in your lap right now, but if you want to, I would entertain the motion.
yeah. So what would we be doing? Are we sending a recommendation? Is this are we
Yeah.
making a resolution? Is this a letter? What is
We
the-
don't make resolutions, we make
Okay.
recommendations.
Yes, we make recommendation. So I think I would move that we recommend to the Board of County Commissioners that the Planning Commission be substantively involved in the scoping process and other subsequent processes for the comp plan update before decisions are made by the Board of County Commissioners. Or before they go to the Board of County Commissioners for decisions.
Yeah, I think that's more.
Okay, so recommend to the BOCC that the planning commission have substantial involvement of the scoping and public participation plan before
Those are brought to the county commissioners for decisions.
Now, you said other, you didn't say public participation plan.
I did.
Oh, did?
I was changing out other for public participation
Yeah.
plan to get your point.
Okay, but I want to make sure, did you have anything else in mind or was that the other that you were thinking about?
I don't know, the fact that we weren't involved at all in the scoping just creates a really big
Yeah.
cross deficit for me. So I would say all elements of the comp plan update.
Could we say other to include,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
other to include public participation?
Yeah, I'm not writing down fast enough.
Okay. So we've got scoping process and other what do we call the segments? And other
Are they called elements?
Elements.
Usually?
elements are the.
Those are the chapters.
Essentially chapters.
Chapters, yeah. Elements are in the RCW.
Other steps, processes, it's something like that, right? Other phases.
Do you want to
I think
This
we're almost
recommendation
there.
doesn't need to be,
Yeah.
it doesn't need to be today. Do you want to work on that and bring it back?
Well,
our
I'm
next
meeting,
kind
we're
of
so close.
declarative on this one. I think let's just have a
Could you-
silent
Could you
moment.
read back what you have?
I have a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners that the Planning Commission be substantively involved of the scoping process,
Comp plan update processes to include scoping and public participation.
comp plan, updating process to include scoping and public participation plan before
being brought to the county commissioners for decision making.
When's that supposed to happen, Chris?
March 1st.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, good. Do it.
Okay, so the way that I understand the motion is a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners that the Planning Commission be substantially involved in comp plan update procedures
Process.
of to include the scoping and public participation plan before brought to the Board of County Commissioners for decision making.
Mhm.
Does that sound like what the motion you're making?
Yep, it does.
I just make, I think you said substantively,
Substantively. Yeah.
substantively, and you said substantially.
I would use substantively, but.
Substantively.
Uh-huh.
Substantively.
Oh, you're making the illiterate chair.
And then I,
Talk about.
They probably
and I
put some
wonder if
whereas's
it's
in there.
processes of plural.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to spell it.
Okay, so it's been moved. Is there a second?
Sure.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners that the Planning Commission substantively
Be substantively.
be substantively involved in the comp plan update process and to include scoping and public participation plan before it is brought to the BOCC for decision making.
Yes.
Everybody understand that motion? Do you understand that motion? Any other discussion on this issue?
So I guess Woody would be involved anyway.
Nope.
Nope.
No.
Um,
Okay. That's what-
All right.
No, staff was gonna bring it to the Board of County Commissioners.
We're
in the
gonna,
First part of March.
and we're gonna nose our way in.
Okay.
Or ask to nose our way in.
Yeah.
Recommend that we.
Yes. With that, we'll call for that vote.
I have concerns about this. I mean, I think, you know, on one hand, yeah, it would be nice to be involved in this stuff. But on the other hand, it's the county commissioner's job to do it, I think. I do have a problem with the continual use of the word scoping. But I think we're just adding times and days and money. If we expect the staff to bring us the comprehensive plan, I guess. And expect us to go through and discuss it. And then send it to the board. And I mean, I just think it's an extra step that I don't know that it's needed.
If I may, it's quite literally why planning commissions exist, is to do this work. And we're not, I don't think, stepping in the way of a decision that is the Board of County Commissioners to make. The way this is supposed to work is that the planning commissions and staff are supposed to work on things before they go to the Board of County Commissioners for decisions. And what's happening now is we've got staff doing work without involving the planning commission and taking it to the Board of County Commissioners that will prescribe basically the sandbox we get to play in. And that's not the way the process is supposed to work. So we're not trying to get in the way of, it will slow things down, but I think it was a massive oversight on the part of staff in the county to not bring us into the scoping process. So I think it's not our fault that it's going to slow things down. I think it was a tremendous oversight.
All right, any other comments? With that, I'll call for the vote.
Commissioner Day. Commissioner Nelson. Commissioner Helverson.
Aye.
Commissioner Hanson.
Aye.
Commissioner Simmons.
Aye.
Commissioner Wheatley. Commissioner Pessinger.
Aye.
Commissioner Casino.
Would you write a minority report if there was?
I'd looked at it if you sent me the motion.
Nay. And Scott might write you a minority report to go with that. And if you can have that in by Monday, that would be fantastic.
All I can, because I mean, my problem isn't that I'm substantially against the idea.
We understand that. We understand, but there's some fine details in there that I think that your point needs to be made. Okay. Well, that motion passed 6-2. And thank you for forwarding that recommendation to the BOCC. All right, with that, we're going to move on to item 8 on our agenda, the calendar for our upcoming meetings. Our next meeting is scheduled for February 15th. And we will be doing more code clarification and corrections amendments. And we will also be talking about the feedback from the Planning Commission. Is there anybody that is not expecting to be here February 15th? Right, we should all be here. And then on March 1st, 2023, we're going to be doing a short course. And maybe some other stuff too to be determined. Is there anybody that thinks they will not be able to make it to the March 1st meeting? All right, looks like everybody should be here. Is there anything for the good of the order? All right, hearing nothing else and having no further business, this meeting is adjourned.
Meetings in a row, really.